movie page, and sure enough, every single fact the podcast guides had shared was lifted from the Wikipedia page, presented in the exact same order. The stories, the anecdotes, the quotes, they had said nothing that hadn't also appeared here. What was presented to me as a couple of amateur experts sharing the history of an important film was really just little more than a couple of guys who clearly knew nothing about anything, offering a broad paraphrase of a single website summary with absolutely nothing new or original added. And this is what consuming information on the internet has become. Even if you strenuously seek to avoid using Wikipedia, you can't escape it because so many people have absolutely no shame about just brazenly regurgitating information from the site. All of those blogs sharing obscure facts about crazy places, or YouTube channels telling you wacky stories from forgotten history. You know, they might seem like they're the product of a creative individual's independent research, but if you cross-reference their subject with the corresponding Wikipedia page, the odds are high that you'll find that they too are sharing nothing beyond what Wikipedia has. At best, a staggeringly high percentage of information on the internet these days, even including news reports and the mainstream media, merely consist of well-curated selections of Wikipedia content. Now, this matters for a few reasons. One is that we should be deeply concerned about knowledge being monopolized in such a dramatic and unprecedented way. Here's a good quote from the historian Matthew White, who once ran a very good anti-Wikipedia blog.
Wikipedia has become the McDonald's/Microsoft/Walmart of information. It provides reliably mediocre information at a low cost. This drives competitors out of business, reduces diversity, and lowers the standards all across the board. Just as McDonald's is where you go when you're hungry, but don't really care about the quality of your food, Wikipedia is where you go when you're curious, but don't really care about the quality of your knowledge.
When I was young, the internet was filled with multiple different websites on multiple different topics. If you wanted to learn about, say, the history of pizza, you would have to hunt around until you found a special pizza-centric website that someone had made. Often these websites were true passion projects containing enormous amounts of information by dedicated experts, sometimes professionals, sometimes not, but always presented in a way that reflected a deep and legitimate interest in the subject. I think of websites like Robert Christkow's amazingly thorough guide to American rock music, or Mark Shoemaker's site about Japanese spirituality and folklore, or B. Schemmel's Encyclopedia of World Leaders, or old man Matthew White's Historical Atlas of the 20th century. There used to be a lot of these kind of sites back in the day, but they have slowly faded away over time, and there seems to be little interest in making them anymore, given your average internet user will see no reason to ever visit such a site, since Wikipedia is right there. The fact that so many of the old single-topic sites offered a higher quality of knowledge was ultimately no match for the one-stop shop convenience of Wiki. The fall of the single-topic information sites was also significant in that it marked a significant decline in authorial accountability for the information we consume online. So in theory, anyone who wants to can edit a Wikipedia article, and Wikipedia lists as one of its core principles the idea that people should be able to contribute to articles without providing a real name or even registering for an account. This is worrying unto itself, but in any case, in practice, the writing and editing of Wikipedia articles is done by an extremely tiny subculture of largely anonymous, hardcore Wikipedia nerds. People have used different ways to measure just how small the clique of people who make and revise Wikipedia articles is, and the conclusion seems to be that it's about 1% of all registered users, and that this number has been declining in recent years. This Vice story from 2017 estimated that only about 1,300 people are creating the over 3/4 of the 600 new articles posted to Wikipedia every day. While this 2019 CBS story estimated that a third of everything on Wikipedia was written by just one guy. Even generally sympathetic scholars of Wikipedia, like Purdue University's Soren Anamate, will readily concede that the site is run by a pretty narrow elite, saying that Wikipedia only works because it has a dedicated leadership class, and that people worried about its biases should care less about broadening the site's base of users than trying to diversify the people at the top. And who are the people at the top? Well, the conclusion of those who have crunched some of the publicly available data, which Wikipedia tries to keep to a minimum, seems to be that it is mostly people who resemble this guy. A few middle-aged white male Americans with a lot of free time on their hands, but no real credentials for creating the world's leading repository of knowledge beyond that. This lack of diversity might not come as a great shock, considering that other researchers have found that the Wikipedia elite have been generally quite good at erecting complicated bureaucratic rules around themselves to consolidate their power, intimidate newbies, and just generally make the site's content quite difficult for outsiders to change. Anyone who has tried to edit a Wikipedia page will know that the experience is often something akin to going to the grocery store and trying to rearrange the shelves. No matter how well-meaning and logical your changes are, they will not be appreciated, and in all likelihood quickly undone the moment you leave. A 2013 study by several American academics was so discouraged by the cliquish, defensive, and unaccountable culture of the Wikipedia elite, which they called a case of socio-technical gatekeeping, that they offered this snippy conclusion. Wikipedia has changed from the encyclopedia that anyone can edit to the encyclopedia that anyone who understands the norms, socializes him or herself, dodges the impersonal wall of semi-automated rejection, and still wants to voluntarily contribute his or her time, can edit. Now, I'm not somebody who thinks that Wikipedia is full of lies or anything that dramatic, although the general factual accuracy of the articles does tend to vary quite a bit based on how much the editorial clique cares about a given topic. When I was working on my video about American toys, for instance, the wiki-generated fact box about Charles Darrow that popped up in every Google search described him as the man who stole Lizzie McGee's landlord game and was falsely credited by the Parker brothers as the inventor of Monopoly, all of which is an incredibly biased framing of a much more complex situation. But Charles Darrow is also a very obscure historical figure whose story I doubt anybody will care enough to properly tell on his short bio page. But this is the important point. First impressions matter. A Wikipedia article is simply one take on a given topic, but these days it is often the first and only take anyone will hear. The site's smothering dominance of the internet's information ecosystem, including through its complete integration with Google and Apple products, means that how Wikipedia chooses to frame a subject cannot help but become the first and last frame that an enormous number of people will ever encounter of that subject. Now, I know that one of the things people like to say about Wikipedia is, "Oh, I only go there as a starting point." This has always struck me as being about as persuasive as people in the old days claiming to only read Playboy for the articles. Because, I mean, if Wikipedia competitors are largely non-existent, then it is hardly obvious where all of these people are going after Wikipedia to flesh out or corroborate what they learned. You may recall that I called Wikipedia the world's #1 information website. Well, what's the second? SimilarWeb, a web analytics company, lets you sort the internet's most popular sites by category, and when it comes to the genre of reference materials, dictionaries, and encyclopedias, you have to scroll through a lot of definition sites and translation apps before you find another comprehensive encyclopedia-type website. Britannica.com is pretty much the only other site on the net that even approximates Wikipedia's ambition, and it's not even in the world's top 1,000 sites. People will then say that they follow the sources from a Wikipedia article, but independent of the fact that this still means that you're relying on Wikipedia for your information, it has always struck me as another deeply disingenuous claim. Wikipedia's sources, after all, in the sense of the footnotes that they pepper their articles with, don't exist to offer readers a more comprehensive understanding of the topic at hand. They exist simply as a collection of proof points for various arguments made in the article's body text. So they're often just links to news stories or documents that contained a fact or two that was relevant for the purpose of citing something narrowly particular of little interest to a more general reader. Because again, most of the time, educational websites containing general information of a sort that would be of interest to a general reader don't even exist on the internet outside of Wikipedia at all. Now let me just dunk on Wikipedia's quality of writing for a second. Wikipedia articles are written in a style that they call neutral point of view, which although perhaps attractive sounding in theory, is in practice just another intimidating bureaucratic gatekeepery custom that is quite difficult for outsiders to intuitively grasp. Neutral point of view basically just means that Wikipedia articles should prioritize the citation of facts over coherence or readability. It doesn't mean that Wikipedia articles cannot be biased, which they very easily can, but rather that any information you communicate to the reader should be delivered as awkwardly and robotically